distinguished guests, members of the Indo-American Chamber of Commerce, and friends. On behalf of the faculty, staff, and students of IIM Bangalore, I extend a hearty welcome to all of you. It is indeed a privilege to have Mr. Verma with us this afternoon. Excellency, you have now been in India for just under a year as the 25th Ambassador of the United States to India, overseeing one of the largest US missions in the world, including 4 consulates across India and nearly every agency of the US government. Your arrival in India has also coincided with an uptake in bilateral relations that is evolving as one of the most vibrant in the world today. Friends, Ambassador Verma holds degrees from the Georgetown University Law Center, American University's Washington College of Law, and Lay University. He began his career in the US Air Force as judge advocate. His military decorations include the Meritorious Service Medal and Air Force Commendation Medal. The ambassador has held other distinguished positions, including Assistant Secretary of State for Legislative Affairs in the Obama administration, where he led the State Department's efforts on Capitol Hill and also served as a senior member of Secretary of State Hillary Rodham Clinton's team. He was a member of the Secretary of State's Foreign Affairs Policy Board from 2011 to 2014. Ambassador Verma has worked in the Senate as the Senior National Security Advisor to the Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, and in the House of Representatives assisting longtime Chairman of the Defense Appropriations Committee, Jack Murtha. Excellency is a member of the Council on Foreign Relations and has served on the boards of the Clinton Foundation, the National Democratic Institute, and Human Rights First. The ambassador has had a distinguished career in the private sector too, serving as partner at the global law firm of Steptoe & Johnson LLP and as senior counselor to the Albright Stonebridge Group. His practice focused on international law and regulatory issues with a specialization in Asia and emerging markets. I'm sure he will be sharing with us his assessment of the emerging market he's in right now, India. Excellency, may I now request you to deliver your talk on technology, innovation, and societal change.
Really great to be with all of you, and I appreciate all of you coming out middle of the day. I know everyone is busy. This is a fairly intimidating picture to have behind me here. I'm reminded of the convocation address I gave at DAV College, where my father graduated in 1951 in Punjab. And they had 2 giant screens, one on the right of President Obama and one on the left of my father. And these 2 people were looking down on me for the entire speech. It was more than a little intimidating, I can tell you. I'm reminded as I come to these great institutions in India, these great educational institutions, and let me thank our hosts here. I've heard so much about this great school for a long time, and I'm really happy to be here. But my dad reminds me each week that we're not doing enough in the education field. He is an educator and a professor. My mother was a school teacher. My grandmother was a school teacher. You can only imagine what it was like growing up in the United States with 2 Indian school teachers as your parents. I remember in the 9th grade coming home with a report card that I was particularly pleased by. 5 A's and 1 A minus. And we spent the next 2 days talking about the A minus. How could that have happened? Did you have a problem with your teacher? Was there a problem with it? So they've put a lot of good incentives and pressure on me over the years. My dad was just here visiting for about a month, and we were able to go back to his village where he's from, which is in Punjab, as I mentioned. Growing up, I will tell you, he had quite a way of describing India and our connections to India. He immigrated in the 1960s And he always would find some connection to any Indian person, no matter who they were, that we met in the United States. It could be a taxi driver, it could be the CEO of a company. He would say, son, we're from the same town. We went to the same school. She's friends with your cousin sister's best friend, you know. Finally, I remember saying to my dad, I said, Dad, there's 1 billion people in India at that time, at least. I said, you can't know every one of them. He said, son, well, you don't understand. India's a very small place, and we're very connected. We're all from the same place. I said, okay. So we just agreed to disagree. In the fall of 2009, I was serving as the Assistant Secretary of State, and I got invited by the White House to come to the White House to greet the Prime Minister of India, who was coming for a state dinner. So I did what any good son would do. I called my dad. I said, Dad, you're not going to believe this. I've been invited to meet the Prime Minister of India. He said, that's great. You make sure you tell him we're from the same place. So I said, Dad, I can't lie to the Prime Minister of India. I said, that would be, one, it would not be polite. One doesn't lie to a Prime Minister. He calls me the next day. He said, you're going to tell him, right? I said, definitely not going to tell him. Morning of the ceremony comes. I'm very excited. I head down to the White House. There's about 12 of us there to greet the Prime Minister, and I'm waiting in line, and the President sees me, and we knew each other from the Senate, and he says to the Prime Minister, he says, Mr. Prime Minister, this is Rich Verma. He's Assistant Secretary of State. Prime Minister kind of pauses, and he looks at me from head to toe. He's looking at me. He says, your family is from India. I said, yes, sir, my family is from India. He then asked me a question. He said, where's your father from? I said, my father is from Jalandhar, Punjab. Prime Minister turns to the President, says his father and I are from the same place. Now, you hate it when your parents are right. But my parents were right. So we are all from the same place. And in fact, that was the name of the speech that I gave when I went back to DAV College. It was entitled, We're All from the Same Place. So anyway, today I want to talk to you about what I believe is the greatest promise in the coming together of the people of the United States and India, and that is our young thinkers. As I've traveled around this great country and met with scientists, entrepreneurs, scholars, and students, I've marveled at the energy and brilliance of the minds I've encountered and have been continually amazed at the creativity and commitment to service among the young Indians I have met. Whether devising technological innovations to serve the needs of their communities or making their voices heard about international issues, India is regarded around the world as home to some of the most groundbreaking young minds on the planet. I've also been enormously pleased to see the irrepressible enthusiasm of young Americans and Indians as they seek each other out to discuss on Facebook, Skype, and Twitter the issues about which they are passionate. They don't always agree with our governments or their teachers or their parents, that I can attest to, but it is the conviction of their ideas and their determination to share them with the world that I believe is one of the greatest sources of hope for our planet. It's fitting that I'm speaking about innovation today in Bangalore, a city that has long been at the forefront of discovery in India. In 1905, Bangalore became the first city in Asia with electrical power, and I'm gratified to know that the United States and India have been working together on clean energy since the turn of the last century, when General Electric helped to install Asia's first hydroelectric power station here, which is still producing carbon-neutral energy today. Now, although it may be a bit unorthodox, I'd like to begin my remarks to you today with a few lines from the American poet Ralph Waldo Emerson, who in 1833 wrote the following verse. Oh, what is heaven but the fellowship of minds that each can stand against the world by its own meek and incorruptible will. A fellowship of minds. Which two countries better embody this ideal than the world's oldest and largest democracies? Two dynamic countries founded on a commitment of liberty of thought and speech. Two countries whose young citizens, thanks to the freedom they enjoy, are charged with intellectual bravery and rigor. And two countries whose very different histories and traditions gave rise to differing perspectives on the world that are equally vital and mutually essential. I've spoken before about the relationship between our two countries as an alliance for global prosperity. But I ask you to imagine the possibilities if this alliance were to unleash the combined creativity of our young thinkers for the good of humankind. A few weeks ago, Prime Minister Modi's words seemed to echo those of Emerson when he said, after meeting President Obama in New York, that the great promise of the U.S.-India relationship lies in youth, technology, and innovation, and the natural partnership of Indians and Americans in advancing human progress. Now, the history of discovery is built upon the bravery of those women and men who raised a question, who launched an idea or suggested a new way of looking at a problem that changed the world. But the most revolutionary thinkers were those who embraced the fellowship of minds described by Emerson and viewed their innovations as pieces of a puzzle that could only be completed by others. Pieces of a puzzle that can only be completed by others. Intellectual collaboration, propelled by an openness of mind and esteem for diversity, has the power to change the very firmament of our planet. In 1956, the English meteorologist G.M.B. Dobson first recorded an anomaly in the ozone layer over the Antarctic. At that time, few members of the scientific community perceived implications of this phenomenon. Over subsequent decades, hundreds of scientists from dozens of countries working under the UN Environment Program and the World Meteorological Organization gradually came to the understanding that human actions were shredding the protective layers of our atmosphere that made human life possible on Earth. They realized that human use of chlorofluorocarbons and hydrofluorocarbons, or CFCs and HFCs, were resulting in the depletion of the ozone in the Earth's stratosphere with grave consequences to human health and agriculture. Thinkers from countries as diverse as Ecuador and Sweden, and including Dr. Gufran Baig of the Indian Institute of Tropical Meteorology, did something that was quite literally earth-changing. Through the sheer power of ideas, they persuaded the governments of the world to put in place and continually strengthen a mechanism that is actually reversing this process. The Montreal Protocol, established in 1987 as a result of international scientific collaboration, has resulted in the worldwide end of CFC production and has begun the healing of our planet's ozone layer, preventing millions of cases of cancer and threats to global food security. Now, at about that same time that Dr. Dobson was analyzing data on the Antarctic anomalies, a young Indian postdoctoral student research associate was arriving at the University of Wisconsin. Dr. M.S. Swaminathan, motivated by a deep personal commitment to ensuring that no human being on the planet should ever face the horror of famine, began his collaboration with the famous American researcher Dr. Norman Borlaug. During several years of collaborative research in America, Dr. Swaminathan developed the ideas that would lead to his scientific breakthroughs in high-yield rice and wheat. That collaboration between two young Indian and American scientists helped change the course of human history by liberating millions of people around the world from the seasonal fear of crop failure and famine. And I'm happy to report that the collaboration between Indian and American minds continues to save and change lives today. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and the National Institutes of Mental Health and Neurosciences here in Bangalore are right now engaged in joint research to more effectively diagnose, test, and treat acute encephalitis syndrome, which causes thousands of illnesses and hundreds of deaths each year around the world. Also here in Bangalore, the Center for Disease Control is working with India's National Institute of Veterinary Epidemiology and Disease Informatics to detect, control, and prevent diseases that can be transmitted from animals to humans, which cause 60% of all human illness. Disease knows no borders, and the advances that our scientists make together will prevent untold suffering for people around the world. Engineers in Bangalore and Silicon Valley have collaborated to create a portable ventilator, allowing hospitals and clinics in rural areas to provide life-saving care. Designers from Silicon Valley have collaborated with the famous Jaipur Foot organization to develop an improved artificial knee for amputees. This simple device has allowed young men and women who have not walked for years to reclaim their mobility and their dignity. Back in 2009, before innovation and startups became the buzzwords that they are today, our governments established the U.S. Science and Technology Endowment Fund, seeded with 640 million rupee endowment at the U.S. Embassy. The fund partners with India's Department of Science and Technology to issue yearly calls for proposals for up to 2.5 crore rupees each. To date, we have funded 18 proposals, including technologies to remove toxic arsenic from groundwater in Bengal and Bihar, a solar electric tractor, a low-cost portable auto refractor to prescribe corrective eyeglasses in areas without eye doctors, seed treatments to improve stress tolerance in crops, and many, many more ideas are in the pipeline. And this is just the beginning. During the recently concluded Strategic and Commercial Dialogue in Washington, D.C., our governments agreed that in 2016, we would launch a private sector-led innovation forum to ignite and scale innovation and encourage entrepreneurship. The United States has also been a strong supporter of Prime Minister Modi's Startup India, Stand Up India initiative to encourage entrepreneurship among India's youth and facilitate startups across India. Now, some have claimed that the different historical and cultural backgrounds of our countries impose limits on the depth of our intellectual collaboration. According to these arguments, the way Indians and Americans see the world is just too different for us to tackle fundamental problems together. Now, not only do I reject this view, but I've seen many examples of how our differences actually strengthen rather than detract from our ability to forge new ideas together. For example, Indian traditional medicine is generating immense interest in the United States. Officials from our U.S. Department of Health and Human Services recently met in the U.S. with Indian traditional medicine, or the Ayush Ministry, to learn more about this tradition and to discuss the processes under which traditional Indian medicine could become more widely available in the United States. I have been moved by the generosity and enthusiasm with which Indians are eager to share their cultural heritage with the people of the United States. Rather than dismissing Indian traditions as incompatible with Western medicine, American scientists and pharmaceutical companies are working with Indian partners on bioprospecting, examining traditional medicine as a source of new drug discovery. About 40% of mainstream pharmaceuticals were derived from plant-based traditional medicines, drugs like aspirin, morphine, the cancer drug Taxol, and the anti-malaria drug artemisinin. Given the great promise of this collaboration, our governments are discussing ways to partner with Indian traditional medicine and U.S. expertise in research and drug development to improve the health of people of countries around the world, including our two countries. Now, a discussion about U.S. and Indian innovation in Bangalore would be incomplete without mentioning a few of the many visionaries from this part of India who have brought our peoples closer together, creating thousands of Indian and American jobs in the process. Luminaries such as N.R. Narayan Murthy of Bangalore, who was just 35 when he established Infosys in 1981, which opened its first international office in Boston in 1987. Subir Bhatia, who grew up in Bangalore and Pune and attended Caltech and Stanford and founded Hotmail in 1996. Dej Deshpande, Indian-American venture capitalist and entrepreneur from Karnataka, who founded the Massachusetts firm Sycamore Networks, and in 2010 was appointed by President Obama as co-chairman of the National Advisory Council on Innovation and Entrepreneurship. And Kumar Malavali of Mysore, the first Indian member of the Silicon Valley Engineering Hall of Fame. And I'd like to express my profound personal admiration of IIM Bangalore board chairperson Karen Mazumdar-Shaw for her pioneering work in biopharmaceuticals and commitment to finding innovative pathways for providing essential services to disadvantaged communities. So a new generation of Indian minds advancing courageous new ideas is following in their footsteps. While in Bangalore this year, Prime Minister Modi visited a group of middle school girls who formed one of two teams from India selected to attend the Technovation Global Technology Entrepreneurship for Girls in San Francisco. The girls, Anupama, Navarasri, Sanjana, Mahima, and Swasti, took home the top prize in the middle school division and a $10,000 seed funding prize for an app that created an online marketplace to solve waste management challenges. And I believe they are here today. Are they here in this room? Raise your hand, girls. Let's give them a round of applause. Why don't you come out so people can see you? Come on out. So I just spent a few minutes with them. They told me their story about how they competed with teams from across the world and developed a mobile application because they were so motivated to solve this waste management issue. And they said, I'm trying to remember the exact quote, they said that waste here is the gift that keeps on giving, or you keep seeing it because it never goes away. And so they wanted to do something to make it go away and to connect people who were actually doing recycling with the people who had recycling to give. So again, thank you, congratulations. Really inspiring. During the Prime Minister's visit to San Jose, he met hundreds of Indian American entrepreneurs who have helped shape Silicon Valley into the leading engine innovation of the world. I heard from dozens of these entrepreneurs during a meeting at a tech startup incubator who were able to leverage their ties back home in India and their unique experience as immigrants to create successful business ventures in the United States. And American entrepreneurs are also looking to create opportunities in India. During the Prime Minister's visit, the Qualcomm Venture Fund announced it would set aside $150 million to invest in Indian startups. Now, in the opening decades of the 21st century, we stand at an inflection point in human history, a juncture of great opportunities, but also one of great peril. Many of the tools that allowed for global industrialization in the last century, such as antibiotics, fossil fuels, pesticides, are now threatening the very habitability of our planet. And unless we resolve to bring to bear the full creativity of the human spirit to address these challenges, the advances we have made over recent generations may be in jeopardy. At the same time, the work of pioneers that have gone before us have provided us the first tentative steps toward marvelous new chapters in human history. The colonization of space, understanding the very building blocks of matter and the universe, utilizing our understanding of the human genome to conquer disease. These are the tasks waiting for a fellowship of minds to realize new triumphs in our collective destiny. Now, innovation is nowhere more critical than the effort to find an effective long-term global response to our shared climate challenges and supplying affordable and reliable energy for everyone. The United States and India could together make no greater gifts to humanity than propelling a clean energy revolution that delivers critical economic and environmental benefits to the people of India, the United States, and the world. We are at a critical stage in this effort. Global investment by governments and the private sector in clean energy research and development is not keeping pace with the demands of this challenge, and we owe it to future generations to increase the pace of innovation. Governments must scale up public research and development. Private companies will need to develop new investment strategies, and the financial sector will need to explore new approaches to risk. President Obama and Prime Minister Modi discussed this question during their September meeting in New York in what the Prime Minister called a global public partnership for developing affordable clean energy sources. We hope that current discussions between the U.S. and Indian governments on increasing government research can begin to channel cutting-edge ideas to the private sector. Already, the world's greatest philanthropists have also joined this effort, including Bill Gates, who has pledged to spend at least $1 billion over the next 5 years to help governments partner with the private sector to adopt and deploy promising new innovations. But the efforts of governments and companies can only lay the groundwork for the search. It will take that spark of epiphany joining two intellects, perhaps between two people in this room, perhaps between students in Bangalore and Albuquerque, New Mexico, to shape the solutions of tomorrow. Let me just say a word about education before I wrap up. You know, there's a concept in physics called critical mass, which is the minimum amount of contact needed to sustain a chain reaction. We cannot expect our young people to develop the synergies and habits of collaboration on a large scale without bringing our educational systems closer together. Once these ties are established, the inherent talent of our youth will propel discovery on its own. But we are not there yet, and this is an urgent task for our governments. We're extremely pleased that the number of Indian students applying to study in the United States this year has increased by nearly 40% over the past year. And this past year, we had 130,000 Indian students studying in the United States, the second highest country contributing students of any country in the world. But it's vital that for collaboration to reach its full potential, that the exchanges go both ways, and that many more American students also study in India. I know you have a few American exchange students here today, which I'm very grateful for. At the moment, far too few American students encounter the rich traditions of Indian scholarship and the ingenuity of its society. To that end, we hope to greatly expand collaboration between American and Indian educational institutions, and not just top-tier universities. The next Infosys or the next Apple is just as likely to be founded by a graduate of a community college or a vocational institute as by an alumnus of a world-famous university. So in conclusion, I can think of no two civilizations better suited to rise to the challenges I have described than the United States and India. At the time when pioneers like Dr. Swaminathan made their discoveries, Intellectual collaboration required long journeys by plane and exchanging scientific papers by registered mail. Today, thanks to the resolve of our governments to protect free expression and an open internet, emerging thought leaders in our countries can exchange ideas through the tap of a touchscreen. In an auto rickshaw or an Uber, from a Starbucks or a Wow Momo, imagine the vast promise of our young people collaborating in real time between Pune and Houston, Srinagar, and Miami. The possibilities are actually limitless. Now, I'd like to conclude my remarks in the same somewhat unorthodox way I started, by reading a poem that has a very special place in American history. The great poet Maya Angelou read the following lines at the inauguration of President Clinton in 1993. Her words exhorted the people of America and all countries to attain our human potential in the service of a troubled world. Today, I can think of no more fitting call to the young people of our two countries. A rock, a river, a tree, host to species long departed, marked by the mastodon, the dinosaur who left dried tokens of their sojourn here on our planet floor. Any broad alarm of their hastening doom is lost in the gloom of dust and ages. But today the rock cries out to us clearly, forcefully, "Come, you may stand upon my back and face your distant destiny, but seek no haven in my shadow. I will give you no hiding place down here." The rock cries out to us today, "You may stand upon me, but do not hide your face." So let's rise to the challenge. Let's rise to the challenge that is set before us. You know, the Prime Minister and the President like to say, when our two countries come together, that the impact on global peace and prosperity will be so positive and will be so limitless. But it doesn't start with governments. It starts with the people in this room. It starts with the young innovators and scientists and young professionals and people from all over this country who can find great partners with our American students and with our population. And I'm very optimistic about the path in front of us. As I said, we've just scratched the surface of what's possible, and I congratulate you on all the successes that you've had here. And I thank you for what you're doing, and I thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk to you today. Thank you very much.
Excellency, wonderful speech.
Thank you.
I would just want to add a couple of more problems to the problem list.
Great.
One thing being the problem of traffic of Bengaluru. So if we can do something together, learning across the globe on how we can make Bengaluru traffic more manageable.
Okay.
And second, about water sustainability in Bengaluru. The availability of water and how water can be better used. And I'm sure California is going through a very testing times with water as well, right? So because of the water shortage brought there.
Yeah.
So,
No,
so
great.
how do we look at these two as well?
It's a great question, and you know, I come from Washington, D.C., which has some pretty legendary traffic as well. But people tell me that it was interesting when we were planning the times in between our meetings here at Bangalore. We would either be 15 minutes early because we had overestimated, or we would be 45 minutes late. There was really no getting to a place on time. But look, you know, I think part of the Smart Cities initiative is really also about how to manage the incredible growth. There's something going on here in India that no other country has faced before at this scale, which is the massive urbanization that is taking place. The movement of people from rural communities into the cities is taking place on a scale that I don't believe they even experienced in China. And so the stresses that this is putting on traffic, on pollution, on schools, on sanitation, it's really, again, it's an important sign of development, but it's also something that we have to get our hands on. We certainly haven't mastered it in the United States, and there's a range of things you can do, from public transportation to incentivizing different kinds of workplaces so that people don't necessarily have to come into the city. But it's something we actually are partnering with India on smart cities development. I'm very happy about that. And then water, boy, I can't think of a bigger, let's say, non-security, I actually think it's a security issue, but one of the greatest challenges confronting India, not only India, but our American West, confronting Africa, confronting other parts of the world, is finding clean and reliable sources of water. And the cause of this is multifold, as you know. It's impacts of climate change and rising temperature. It's overuse of water for irrigation purposes, depletion of the water tables. So I started out my visit yesterday morning at a visit to a project that USAID is funding with a partner organization called Water Health. And it was very, very interesting to walk into the community that had not had access to clean water before, and to talk to the people who live there and to assess the health benefits that they've had just in a few months of having clean water. I think it's one of the central challenges of our time. Thank you.
Hello. Sir, I'm a student from Rice University in Bangalore itself, and when we study political economy, the first thing that we read is the lobbying that goes on in India and US. And when you speak of pharmaceutical companies trying to make medicine cheap probably for India and trying to go hand in hand with Ayurveda and the original historic medicines, where does the pharmaceutical lobby, what role do they play? Are they making it tough for us to make cheaper medicines for the world? Is the whole global solution or health solution a joint activity where the US should be helping India, or are they kind of secretly prohibiting it as well?
You know, I actually read something, and someone may have the exact statistic, but I think India is the second largest source of generic drugs into the United States. Some of the business executives here may actually know that. I actually see this market expanding, not decreasing. I think, look, we share a common goal, which is ensuring that people who need medicine have affordable access to medicine. That's frankly a demand by your population. That's a demand by our population. The trick is to try to keep costs down, to try to make it widely available, to try to protect the science and intellectual and innovation that went into the drug, to ensure we get the price right. So I've already seen a lot of differential pricing here. Same kind of cancer drugs that are sold in the United States are not sold for the same price here. I can assure you of that. I've seen a lot of collaboration and, as I said, exports and generic drug production going into the United States. We just want to make sure that people continue to have access to safe and reliable drugs. So I actually think we've been very, very good partners in this regard. The issue that we haven't been able to tackle fully is the intellectual property issue. And right now there's not an exact meeting of the minds on what qualifies as an innovation. If you improve your drug, if you come out with a version 2.0 or 3.0, is that eligible for patent protection? In the US, yes. In the India, maybe not. That's where there's been some difference of opinion. But when I talk, just as an aside on intellectual property, when I talk about intellectual property in India, and I think about all the artists and innovators and scientists that are here, there's more of a demand for a robust intellectual property regime here in India from Indians than from Americans. So hope that answered your question. Thank you.
That's the last question.
Mr. Ambassador, sir, the question is about technology innovation and the technology transfer in particular, right? So India and US are cooperating in the defense sector increasingly lately. So do you think America's current framework for technology transfer is an impediment in the process? And do you expect to see radical changes happening? On the other hand, from the Indian side, we have some issues around the FDI policy. Do you see that changing drastically in the days to come?
Well, let's see. That's an interesting question. On the FDI policy, the only reason I'm hesitating on FDI is because I don't get to control the FDI policy here in here in India. It has been slowly opening. Some sectors are completely open. There are still some sectors that are closed. On the technology transfer, the vast majority of products are exported from the United States to India license-free, no license required at all. And for those that are required a license, at least from our Commerce Department, I think the number is in the high 90% that get approved, and get approved relatively quickly. Where we still have controls, which frankly most countries of the world have controls, is over more sensitive technology in the defense area and in some of those regards. But even those have been liberalized and have come down. And what we're talking about is not just sending technology from the United States to India. We are now talking about building and developing right here in India. And you mentioned the defense sector. That is one of the most promising and exciting areas, because we are now talking about co-production, joint research, joint development of military products, technology, hardware, here, not just for the Indian use by Indian armed forces, but for availability to third countries as well. So that means collaboration from start to finish. We need to do more to streamline it and make it easier, but we've come a really long way in the technology transfer. I don't see the transfer of technology as being an impediment to innovation, if that was kind of at the heart of your question. I actually think there's so much we can do right now, and whatever controls that are still existing, and particularly as India gets into some of these multilateral export control regimes, a lot of those restrictions will fall even more. So unfortunately, I think we have kind of come to the end, and it's one of these schedules where it's back to back to back, and the only reason I'm not extending this much longer is because I have a plane to catch. But I really I do want to thank you all again for your time, for letting me provide these remarks. It's a great honor and a great opportunity for me to be here serving in this position. It's not lost on me that 60 years ago, my dad lived in a village in northern India and was the first person in his family to go to college. And so I know the power of education. I know how one academic scholarship can change the trajectory of a whole family. And I know without that, I wouldn't be up here today. And so when I go around the country, I know how important every exchange program is, every scholarship program, every development program that we do, just so people have the chance to maybe one day stand up here like I am. So thank you very much.
Excellency Richard Verma, Ambassador of the United States of America, Vasante Srinivasan, our most valued invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. I consider it a privilege to be given this opportunity to extend a word of thanks. On behalf of IIM Bangalore, the director, my colleagues in the faculty, the students, and on my own behalf, I'd like to extend my deep gratitude and appreciation for the excellent address that you gave us. You covered practically everything from A to Z, but more importantly, from concept to concrete. And you gave examples, and you also showed us where possible paths lay in the future. And for this, we are truly grateful to you. In particular, your topic is very topical in the sense that India is on the threshold, apart from our relations being on an inflection point, India is on the threshold of change. Change is generally painful, but it does happen when its time has come. And the most important thing is you were able to cite examples where direct use of some of the innovations have been made in our society to make life easier and better. And I'm sure collaboration between the two countries, given the population on one side, there is a market, and the intellectual property on the other side, the intelligence, will complement each other in a manner that is beneficial to both sides. I'd also like to take this opportunity to record a hearty thanks to all those behind the scenes and who ensured the organization and smooth conduct of this event. I acknowledge with much appreciation the presence of media at today's event and hope that we would have the opportunity of having their views shared in the near future. Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, once again I thank you for being with us this afternoon. It's been a great pleasure. But before we disperse, may I request the Ambassador to accept a small memento from the Indian Institute of Management.